What's going on, people? It's your boy NGS, back at it with another video. Now, the topic for today's discussion, ladies and gentlemen, pertains to the recent controversy surrounding whether or not the Xbox brand is going to become a full multi-platform publisher. I'm not talking about Xbox games on just PC and cloud. I'm talking about the possibility of whether or not you could be revving up your Lancer using a DualSense controller. We're going to talk about all the rumors and leaks that have been transpiring over the past 72 hours. Of course, Phil Spencer's nothing burger response to these issues. We're going to talk about the community fallout. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about whether or not Halo Reach is going to be coming to the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, before we dive further into that, I do want to first say, welcome back to the channel, you guys. It's been quite a while since I've actually done a standalone video on here. For the most part, we've transitioned into doing live streams, and we've seen a lot of great success on that. So shout out to the Ask Neo crew. Shout out to the Man Listen show. But considering a lot of you guys either are not on Twitter or you just do prefer the long form video format, I decided I might as well do a video addressing this whole situation. So if you guys do like this and you want me to get back into doing proper video making, even if it is just me regurgitating the stuff I've already said before, comment down below and let me know. And of course, like I mentioned earlier at the start of this video, everything I'm going to be speaking on are rumors, leaks, and speculations. All of the things that we're discussing have not been confirmed whatsoever. So we're not going to be speaking in absolutes. We're not going to be speaking in certainties about what Xbox is going to be doing with the brand. However, we are going to be humoring the idea of it. And if there is something that I have learned in the past, almost 20 years of making videos on this website, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. I just celebrated 15 years of being a content creator. There are subscribers I have now who are not even 15 years old yet. That's just, oh boy. But if there is one thing that I've learned about being a content creator on this platform and someone who just likes to analyze things happening across various industries, is that if there's smoke, there's fire, bro. And that is something that I've been seeing in regards to Xbox potentially going more multi-platform. But before we dive into the fallout of the past 72 hours and people in the community going crazy and declaring the brand dead, selling off their consoles, yada, 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 we first have to rewind the clock and figure out how we even got to this point about how Xbox, this company who owns all of these studios, all these teams, all these IPs, they're poised to be the strongest publisher in the game, why they would want to give up all that stuff and just go multi-platform. It all started a couple of weeks back via Nate the Hate. Nate the Hate was on a podcast and he was talking about in the very near future, you are going to see an Xbox game go multi-platform. Now, for those who are unaware of Xbox's approach as far as when it comes to releasing games, Xbox has not been in the exclusive game as a traditional console approach. With the release of Quantum Break back in 2015, and then we brought it to PC in 2016, all of our marquee first-party titles, whether they be from our first-party studios or collaborations with other teams, they are going to be day and date. If you have an Xbox console, you're also going to be able to play the game on PC via Play Anywhere, and then eventually they made the move into offering the games day and date on Steam as well, which is also very important into this equation. So if you've been a gamer on Xbox in any sort of capacity over the past almost decade now, you're pretty much used to the Xbox console not being your sole place to play games. And then after that, of course, they've expanded more into offering things on the cloud services via, it used to be called Project X Cloud, but now it's just, I think, Xbox Cloud streaming across the board. So if you are a person who wants to enjoy Xbox games, you can stream them on your console, on your PC, on your tablet, on your mobile phone, and now on your TVs with some particular platforms like Samsung. So it's gone from just the Xbox ecosystem being the console to being the console, the PC, anywhere that you have access to these games. If you have a controller, or in some cases, if you have a touch screen, you can play Xbox games. But for a lot of people, that really wasn't an issue considering, well, these games are still exclusive from a console point of view. PC is its own market, it's its own beast, it's not a big deal. But if you're talking about the vast majority of gamers out there, at least in our realm, how we view it, how we talk about games online, most people consume video games in a console format, the PlayStation, the Xbox, the Nintendo. That's basically how it's been for the longest time. There are differentials. There are people who have multiple platforms. But for the longest time, most people out there, if they're viewing Xbox, they're viewing PlayStation, they're viewing Nintendo, they're viewing it as gaming for them. And it's from a traditional point of view, not multi-platform, not multi-publisher on other systems, right? So it's a very key important point. Even though Microsoft has technically been a multi-platform publisher for almost 10 years, it's not viewed as such. So when Nate the Hate comes out here and he's talking about the idea of an Xbox game coming to other platforms, of course, he didn't list any names, but he did say it was an Xbox game that had been in the running for Game of the Year. Now, being real about life for a second, if you've been gaming on Xbox for the past, well, past 10 years, you know there really weren't that many games that were Game of the Year caliber. These aren't, digs at Xbox. It's just facts. Just facts, people. Some good games, sure, but Game of the Year contender conversations? Maybe if your publication has Xbox in the name. However, things did change in the year of our Lord Baby Yoda, 2023, because Xbox did release a game that was in the conversation for Game of the Year. That game, of course, being Hi-Fi Rush from Tango Gameworks. It was a shadow drop release after the very first Xbox Developer Direct. It was a game that a lot of people didn't see coming, and for a lot of people, it was the game that the Xbox brand needed. Because not only did that game, garner critical acclaim, it was interesting, it was different, it got a lot of eyes and attention on it. It got a lot of people out there looking at that game and looking at the Xbox brand as a whole differently. You did not see that level of excitement for an Xbox product in the same way as you did all the other games that they released. Now, that's not to say that from a commercial point of view and sales-wise, Hi-Fi Rush was infinitely more successful than something like a Starfield, but when you're looking at it from the traditional point of view of how you sell gamers on your ecosystem, you have a game there on your platform. It's interesting enough. I want to play it. I don't want to buy a PC. I'm thinking about getting a console. It was the first time in a very long time that the Xbox brand had a game like that. So for a lot of people out there, Hi-Fi Rush was that game that Nate the Hate was talking about. And then from there, a few days later, we started getting reports from other people in the industry kind of corroborating that claim and backing it up, saying like, yeah, Hi-Fi Rush is probably going to go multi-platform, but it's not just Hi-Fi Rush, my friends. Sea of Thieves could actually be going multi-platform. Sea of Thieves from Rare, of course, has been out on the Xbox ecosystem of platforms for the past 5 years. And, it's a live service game. When you get into the topic of live service games, obviously the goal is to reach as many players as possible. So you have Hi-Fi Rush, you have Sea of Thieves. Hi-Fi Rush, this smaller, very, 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 very much so a passion project game. Of course, not on the level of a huge Starfield. And then you have Sea of Thieves. It's a live service game. So over the past couple of weeks, people have just been rationalizing the idea of that. Well, it's not a big deal if it's a Hi-Fi Rush here or it's a Pentiment there. They're testing the waters. They're opening the floodgates, but it's doing it like a very slowly, drip, drip the content. And hey, Sea of Thieves, man, it's been out for half a decade. If they want to reinvigorate the game, why not put it out on PlayStation and maybe Nintendo Switch? Who knows? And then we got the bombshell that was this past weekend, where we started to hear more and more people come forward and say that it's not just Hi-Fi Rush, it's not just Sea of Thieves. We're talking about a couple of more titles. And it was so crazy. If you were watching this in real time unfold on Twitter, it was just absolutely insane, because it was Starfield, and then it was Indiana Jones, and then some people were saying, oh, it's actually going to be the whole slate of games coming. And here's the thing. Like I said earlier, if these are just rumors and speculations from just some random Joe Blow on, NeoGaf, Reset Era, Reddit, things like that, most people wouldn't care about it, because let's be honest, 99% of the rumors that come out in the gaming community, they're horseshit. Let's be real about life for a second. Do you know how many times people have been rumoring Bloodborne is going to get remade or get a 60 FPS patch or just get a remaster in general? They've been rumoring this thing since damn near the PS5 was out. And it's still not a thing. But, people believe it as such because folks want to get excited. Or if you're in this space of discussing stuff, folks want to use this as fuel in the console war or be armchair analysts. It is what it is, unfortunately. However, when we start getting people in the community, a lot of folks out there with reputable track records, a lot of these people backing up those claims and saying that there's going to be a couple of other things there that might surprise you. Now, I'm not going to sit here and name any other names, but if you follow along in this story, you know the people I'm talking about. And as you can expect, shit went bananas, bro. Absolutely insane. People were screaming, crying left and right, like, oh my God, are you telling me that this console that I bought for exclusive games, this console that you sold me on with the idea of us finally having all these studios and you can compete. You got Satya and Nadella up there saying, let us compete, pleading with the FTC to approve the ABK deal. You're telling me that now that you have all the ammo and you're poised to be a bigger and stronger Xbox, you're just gonna give that shit away to PlayStation and Nintendo? Like, come on now, surely this can't be real. But where there's smoke, there's fire. And unfortunately, we'll speak more about this a little later, Xbox's response to this was not the best way that you can handle it. Within 24 hours, Phil Spencer got out there and he said that, hey, we're listening and we hear you, and we're going to reveal more details about what is transpiring with the future of Xbox at a business event later this week. We're listening and we hear you. Now, I know this has been a pretty serious video up to this point, but does anybody else get like ex-girlfriend flashbacks when they say, we're listening and we hear you, we understand it? He didn't say this isn't happening. He didn't. And if there's one thing that the Xbox brand has been very good at over the past couple of years, it's been dispelling rumors, it's been interacting with the community, it's been getting out there and just talking about things, right? Like, remember when Starfield came out and they said, yes, it's exclusive, and Aaron Greenberg, every single post, and I'm not just talking about like from news outlets, I'm talking from like Jimbo6835, screw Xbox. He's saying, yeah, well, you know what? Starfield's exclusive, Jimbo. How about that? Radio silent. Not a peep out of these people, which is very perplexing. And then you have Phil Spencer's response where he did not refute it. And he said, check back next week. That man essentially said, y'all need to just start gaming more because I'm not going to sit here and talk about this stuff. We'll wait about it till next week. Not the best response, especially to your dedicated community that has been going through the ringer for the past decade. Okay? So this is where we're at this point, right? We have all these rumors and these speculations regarding the Xbox brand potentially going more multi-platform than ever before. We have all of these people out here in the community and in the commentating space who are just rightfully so up in arms about this. There's been no communication from Xbox, no proper communication, I should say, and people are pissed off, okay? Now, I'm not going to sit here and condemn folks and telling them how they should feel. There's some people who are angry about this. There's some people that are excited about this. I'm not going to sit here that anybody is wrong in how they are feeling in their response to this. Now, of course, I think it's crazy if you destroy a $500 console and if you immediately sell it without, just at least hearing them out. But when it comes down to people who have legitimate complaints as a consumer and you being invested in this ecosystem, listen, it'd be the exact same thing if it was PlayStation. It'd be the exact same thing if it was Nintendo. There are tons of people, again, not excusing the folks who are going batshit insane and who are like DMing folks wild shit and crazy stuff. Not those people. I'm talking the folks who have legitimate complaints. And if they have legitimate complaints about this situation, they are not being negative. They are not folks out there that you have to say, listen, you don't understand business. Listen, you don't want people to play more games, like all the crazy stuff that you hear to shut down any forms of critiques and criticisms. If there's one thing that I will be absolute at, I just don't like folks who are just shitting on others who have valid and warranted complaints, especially from a company that, let's be real about life for a second, we're all friends here. We're all friends. I have a lot of friends over who work at Xbox. The Xbox brand has been a shit show for the past decade. And it's always been the promise of wait for E3, wait for this, wait for the tools, wait for Phil Spencer to have like his 5-year tenure and then it's 10-year tenure. It's always been wait. And if there's one thing that Xbox is guaranteed and they're good at, it's being not proactive, they're being reactive. So there'll be some crazy stuff that happens and their response is the worst. Like the whole Xbox Live Gold fiasco that happened, they were really trying to raise the price and take away the yearly thing without letting people know and just thought it wouldn't be an issue. And then of course, people spoke up about it and they said, we're listening, we hear you. So yeah, I'm not a fan of people trying to shut down the consumer and any type of criticism that they may have for this, especially with how Xbox has been moving in the past couple of years. Like, let's just get that out on the table. Okay, quick water break. And yes, I drink seltzer water. I love my TV static. And to put a final period on this whole story and how we got to the discussion of Xbox going multi-platform, there was a final report from a ZeniMax employee in regards to their multi-platform strategy, saying that Sarah Bond and the folks at Xbox will be detailing the future at some point in spring. Now, how we went from them talking about it in spring to Phil Spencer announcing it at a business event next week, if I had to say, that community uproar was crazy enough that the folks at Xbox have now been scrambling that their future plans to talk about this, yeah, that shit just got moved up to tomorrow, bro. And I do not envy any of the folks who are working at Xbox, because if you have worked in any type of production, media production, especially if it's at a crazy high level of a corporate, as in Microsoft, you know, a lot of these things take time. And if you execute them effectively, it's just viewed as like a sign of relief, man. Or you can have something like Konami's E3 2010 press conference, which I would not be surprised if they were just winging that the entire time. Seriously. But here we are, you guys, what feels like the strange 5-year gap between Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. We don't know what's going to be happening, other than the fact that at some point next week, we're going to hear about the future of Xbox. Now, what I'm going to do for the latter portion of this video is I want to humor the idea of why Xbox is going multi-platform and why it might not be Xbox themselves that want to make this transition. It could potentially be Microsoft as a whole. And it's very important that I stress that it's Microsoft and not just Xbox, because, well, yes, a lot of those things are interchangeable. Like when we're talking about Sony, PlayStation, we're talking about Microsoft, Xbox, you know, like it's the parent company and this is their division. If there is a particular company that you can just totally see the difference in business and strategy and how they approach things, and it couldn't be even like any more different, it's with Microsoft and Xbox and how they handle things. When you look at how Microsoft has been handling their services over the past 10 years and compare that to how Xbox has been handling things on their end, they are completely different and antithetical to how they do things, especially when you have somebody like Satya Nadella, who is now steering the ship over there. And it's very important that we bring up Satya Nadella, because Satya Nadella taking an interest in the Xbox brand, especially to the point where he gets on there and he is actively speaking about it. Now, I'm not just talking about from the whole ABK situation, you know, the acquisition of Activision Blizzard King, and how he was just saying, hey, let us compete, things like that. I'm just talking about when Xbox really started to gain momentum again. And that started towards the tail end of the Xbox One generation. Well, I'm not going to sit here and rehash the disastrous reveal that was the Xbox One leading into its launch. You guys already know the whole story, but it does bear repeating at what a low point the Xbox brand was 10 years ago. And when you hear a lot of the stuff in regards to the financials of the brand over the past 10 years, even up to today, the brand itself has not really been the most profitable or lucrative for Microsoft as a whole. Now, of course, it's still one of their most successful divisions, you know what I'm saying? It's still in like their top 10, top 5, things like that. However, if you look at the amount of money that they've invested over a 20-year period of time, when you look at all of the disastrous just things that have gone through, from the Red Ring of Death, the launch of the Xbox One, and how they went from selling almost 100 million units with the 360 to selling half that with the Xbox One, you know, going into this service-based future that a lot of these tech companies have been, you know, that's been their bread and butter, you're looking at the Xbox brand as diminishing returns. That's what it's been for the longest time. That's why they slashed a lot of funding during the Xbox One era. And it wasn't until Phil Spencer got in there and he was, you know, doing his damnedest to reverse all of the brand damage that, you know, Don Matrick and the powers that be over there during that leadership, what they did to the brand, you know, it was still not enough, which is why it took until 2018 for a lot of people to see that, okay, this is the new genesis of Xbox. You know, if you give us more time to cook, we're going to deliver on the things that you guys have wanted. Which is why he introduced Xbox Game Pass, which is why he acquired the 5 studios at E3 2018 and at XO. You know, so it was Phil Spencer trying his best with the, as weird as this sounds, I know, with the backing of a billion-dollar corporation that didn't believe in you, he was just trying his best to appeal to people. And it got to a point where he somehow convinced the powers that be at Xbox to acquire ZeniMax Media and Bethesda. You know, they opened the bank, they paid, what was it, like $8 billion for Bethesda? And, you know, that is not an insignificant amount of cash. You know what I'm saying? Even for $1 billion corporation, that's still a lot of money. You know, we talk about Microsoft profitability this, profitability that, blah, blah, blah. They piss money away like it's nothing. That's still a lot of money. So in order for Phil Spencer to convince somebody to open the bank on that, you are going to have a lot more eyes on you. So you acquire Bethesda, and then the powers that be are thinking to themselves, okay, you bought this company right here to secure IP, franchises, development talent. You really want to bolster Game Pass. Okay, that's great. And these are your projections if you get to a point, especially because this was during lockdown, this was during COVID. So a lot of people were leaning towards subscription services and streaming being the future. They're looking at that growth, especially with the new console uptick. They're looking at that and they're thinking to themselves, all right, that's great. So if we give you this $8 billion and this is what you're expecting and the console that you're selling, and I'm not going front. At the time when they closed on Bethesda, the excitement for the Xbox brand was at an all-time high. It was the first year of the console generation. The consoles were selling pretty competitively for the most part. And the Xbox brand, I mean, you guys know the aura and the enthusiasm that was there for Xbox in 2021. Like that can't be refuted. After they announced things at E3 that year, when they had the 6 and 6 program, you had a lot of people out there who were excited. You saw the uptick in console sales after that E3. Folks were genuinely excited for this platform that's finally been competing in the past decade. They are finally giving you a reason to look in. And then what happens after that? What happens after that is, of course, they start looking at what's their next big acquisition. Gaming is the next big form of revenue. Everybody knows it's the most successful form of entertainment. What is the next move that you do? Well, buy another publisher. And in this case, you go for the big one. You go for ABK, Activision, Blizzard, King. But it's not an $8 billion acquisition. No, it's not. That's chump change by comparison. We're going 10 times. We're thinking bigger than that. That thing is almost $100 billion. And it wasn't just the fact that it was $100 billion. It wasn't just that, guys. It was everything that came with it. All the legal red tape, getting it approved in so many different territories, the court cases with the FTC. It took an acquisition that started at the beginning of 2022, almost 2 years to close. Now, for a lot of people out there, you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's just the cost of doing business, Neo. Like, look at all these other companies when they do major M&As. Of course, sometimes this stuff takes a while to close. What a lot of people don't realize is, and again, this is just my viewpoint as an armchair analyst, what a lot of people don't realize is that when you are wrapped up in so much legal red tape, when you are trying to acquire a company that large, and at the same time, you are trying to make yourself look as strange as this sounds, you're trying to make yourself look like you're weaker by comparison to PlayStation, even though you have the backing of $1 billion on the cusp at the time of being a $1 trillion evaluated corporation. That does catastrophic damage for the brand. And if you guys looked at how Xbox performed in 2022, and that's something we got to be honest with ourselves. Like, every time I say that Xbox did not have a good 2022, if you look at just the way Xbox was approaching things from their, outside their slip-ups, their communication was on point, the excitement for the brand was on point, they were giving us so many cool updates for the console features, they were doing amazing Game Pass drops. It went from that being such an incredible 2021 to 2022 being like, okay, you'll get a couple of day-and-day Game Pass drops, and then we can't talk about all the exciting things we want to see. We can't do any of that because we want to look weak by comparison to Sony. And yes, of course, they probably didn't have some stuff to show considering we were still in COVID, people working from home. The timeline got pushed for when they can show off more games. Absolutely. But you cannot deny that the messaging for Xbox in 2021 by comparison to 2022 and 2023, it was just not the same. It wasn't. So the excitement for the brand and people actually buying the consoles, it just wasn't there. I mean, sure, the Xbox Series consoles were selling, but just because you're selling doesn't really mean that you're selling. Just because you're reporting that, yeah, we sold this in a quarter, doesn't really do anything. And what a lot of people have to also remember is that with the Xbox brand and how they're viewing things now that they've acquired 2 publishers in ZeniMax Media Bethesda and with Activision Blizzard King, you have different levels of expectations, which is why we are in this situation we are in now, where Microsoft might be trying to strong-arm Xbox into doing this multi-platform publisher approach. Because it's a different thing when you have your Xbox studios and you're cultivating those studios and you're putting out those games and you're doing the Game Pass thing, and then you buy a big publisher like Bethesda, and then you want to leverage Bethesda so you can do Game Pass stuff. Hypothetically speaking, you could be sustainable in that respect. Because, even though that is a crazy acquisition, it is still one of those things that where if you just keep doing what you're doing and you let the games speak for themselves, oh yeah, the brand is going to grow. Why? Because it's tried and true. It happened. Look at the PlayStation 3. Sony shot themselves in the foot with a $600 console. It took them almost 4 years to regain momentum. But once they got that price drop in, they got that new model, they focused on the games, it brought them on point, and it basically got them to sell more than the 360 at the end of the generation, which is insane to think about. Same thing with the PS4. Categoric, like just insane success. And yes, a lot of that was partly to do with the Xbox One's blunders, but it became that de facto console to own, right? The Nintendo Switch coming off the Wii U. Yes, the Nintendo Switch had the portability factor for it, but the games and it having its own differentiating factor is what helped that console sell crazy numbers. It's like what? I think almost at 140 million. Absolutely insane to think about. Like a lot of us ate humble pie when it came to our Switch predictions and us thinking that it wasn't going to be that great. So Xbox had the opportunity to do those things because, again, they are in a very unique situation where they could leverage the backing of Microsoft. But leveraging the backing of Microsoft does come with, unfortunately, its own set of obligations. And this whole approach to multi-platform stuff, when you have Satya Nadella coming on here and he's saying that exclusives are not something that he is a fan of. He wants things to be available everywhere. He wants Microsoft Office. He wants all of these things to be available on all platforms. Why? Because you can get the most amount of revenue and you can get the most amount of users and potential customers. So he's viewing that as someone who really had no vested interest in the Xbox brand. And it's crazy to think about because if you go back and look at some of the stuff Satya has said, that man didn't even know when the Xbox Series consoles were launching. That is insane. Like, yeah, it's not your number one division, but you should still know when you have a flagship event as the launch of a new console. Something that only happens like once every 7-8 years. And you don't know, you're not the CEO of the company. Like, what? What is happening? You know? But when you're at that particular level of a company, you just delegate everything. And it's like, if it's not on my radar and we don't care about it, we don't care about it. But now they definitely care about it now that they sunk almost $100 billion into it. And they see the success of live service games. And they see where gaming is going. They see its growth and they see its potential. So for him, he's a business guy. So he's looking at it as, on a balance sheet, right? He's looking at this like, okay, we want to get the most amount of users. You know what, Phil? We bought all those studios, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start putting these games on multiple platforms. I'm talking about PlayStation 5 and Nintendo Switch because we want to get the most amount of money from this. And that is something that we as gamers, unfortunately, we do have to, separate our feelings and our emotions. It's a business at the end of the day for all these companies, whether or not we agree with it. I'm not sitting here and saying that you guys should agree with it, nor that I should agree with it. But for a lot of these people out there, especially when you give someone $100 billion and you write a check for that, you want to start seeing returns on investments, bro. And yeah, Call of Duty makes a lot of money. Diablo, World of Warcraft makes a lot of money. But it's like, we don't want to stop that. We want to make more of that. We want to put it out on more systems than ever. And if I, again, was a betting man, if we're humoring the idea of us getting to a point where we see something like a Starfield and Indiana Jones, any of those games on competitor platforms like PlayStation 5, PlayStation 6, Nintendo Switch 2, if I had to guess, it might have been a tug of war, civil war over at Xbox and Microsoft, right? Because while Phil Spencer is the CEO of Microsoft Gaming, not Xbox, Microsoft Gaming oversees the Xbox division, very important. And Sarah Bond, the beautiful Sarah Bond, Queen, Black History Month. Oh God, they doing her so dirty, sending her out to give this address. You don't do that. You don't do that to a black woman. I'm gonna take some personal offense to that. It's still Microsoft at the end of the day, man. And if they view it with their bean counters and their number crunchers that they can make way more money selling this stuff multi-platform, so every single quarter they're reporting more and more revenue, they're going to put Starfield on PS5. They're going to put Indiana Jones on PS5. Now, the specifics of how they go about this, that's still up for debate. Whether it's timed exclusive, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, whether it's day and date, all that stuff remains to be seen, which is where I think we'll hear an update on it next week. But I think this is probably going to be the future. This is something that you get when you spend $100 billion on acquisitions. You don't want to grow things the old traditional way. You want fast cash. And if there's something you've learned throughout the course of this video and looking through history, guys, fast cash isn't always the best form of cash. It's good cash. Is it sustainable cash? Is it something long-term? Would it come at the detriment of the brand? That's also another thing that we have to consider. But talking about the detriment of the brand, again, it's something that we might have to take a step back in our situation, our little bubbles. The Xbox brand and where it's at right now, well, it's in a much better place compared to 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's still not where it should be, especially by comparison to its competitors in the space, Nintendo and PlayStation. And Xbox has nobody to blame but themselves. It's not the gamer's fault that they don't want to buy an Xbox console. It's not the developer's fault that they don't want to put stuff out on Xbox. It's just such a small, insignificant user base in the grand scheme of things. And of course, someone's going to take offense to that, saying, hey, man, I have 900 games on my Xbox platform, and I am not insignificant. Look at all the money I spend. And yes, of course, you. But when it comes down to it, to this corporation, Microsoft, who just spent $100 billion on acquisitions, they're looking at that like, wait, we've only managed to sell how much in a short amount of time? And you want us to let you cook even more when you are incapable of selling more consoles with all this stuff? No. Like, we don't want to cut this shit out right now. We're going to handle this. Or at the very least, we're going to oversee you. And unfortunately, that might be the case. Like I said, with the whole tug of war, civil war battle situation, Phil could have gotten outvoted. And it sucks considering if you look at Phil Spencer, you can tell that man's a gamer. Like, that man is playing Diablo 4 right now. He should be playing Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, but hey, listen, Phil, I know you watch the channel, bro. We won't get you there. We won't get you acclimated. It's all on Game Pass. Come on now. Seriously. Phil's a gamer. He's a gamer at his heart and his soul. We know this. We know this, man. But he is still a businessman at the end of the day. And as much as he's going to try to stand on business, there's always going to be somebody who is a little bit taller than him. And that is not a short joke reference. I'm just trying to be him, guys. I'm trying to be him with these analogies. But maybe that was Satya. Maybe that was Satya, bro. Maybe he said, nah. You gonna put this on other platforms. And I wouldn't be shocked if we're starting to hear all these leaks from people at Xbox who are just like, I don't like this idea. Because for the first time, we actually have a trajectory, a roadmap to be better, a roadmap for growth. And then you're just going to take away all that goodwill and damage the brand even further. And that brings us back to where we're at, talking about what does this mean for the Xbox brand if it goes multi-platform. Now, I'm not speaking to the people who don't care, the folks who game on PC or the folks who they game on Xbox, but they don't care about whether or not their games are on other systems. I'm not speaking about those people, but talking about the folks who do care about what this means for their box that they spent all this money and they're invested in. Your guess is as good as mine. I have no idea at this point. Will there be a future Xbox console? Absolutely, I believe that. I mean, if you looked at the FTC court case, you know there's going to be another console. But what does it look like after that? In this whole dystopian future that people are expecting, consoles are going to be obsolete in the next 10 years. If that happens, I'm going to stop gaming. But for the Xbox brand, in my humble opinion, I think that this is a detriment for them trying to grow it. Now, it's great for the Microsoft gaming brand. It's great for them that they can have all these publishers and these studios and release it across different platforms. Oh, it's great for them. It's great that they can get all of these games and make all of this money. And hopefully all of these games will make a lot of money so they can keep funding these smaller passion projects. That's the dream at the end of the day. But in terms of growing the console user base, in terms of growing Game Pass, I don't see how this is going to benefit them because you're taking away that differentiating factor, those games. And when you start putting them on other platforms like a PlayStation or Nintendo, people, if they start seeing that they're coming at a very, very rapid rate, They're not going to invest in the ecosystem. They're going to wait for it. Come on now. Let's be real about life for a second. Who in their right mind is going to go out there and buy a Series S or X if they don't game on PC? If they don't game on PC, who's going to buy a Series S or X for Indiana Jones? Let's say the game comes out to 95 on Metacritic. People are talking about it's the greatest thing since Pants with Pockets. It's the greatest thing since your favorite romance option in a Persona game. Who's going to go out there and buy an Xbox console if they know it's going to be on PlayStation in 6 months? For a lot of people out there who play a lot of games, or they only play one thing like Fortnite or Call of Duty, they're going to stay on their PlayStation. And if they know it's coming, they'll wait. They'll wait. And that's what makes the situation so defeatist. And it goes back to the statement that we heard when Phil Spencer, I believe, was on Kind of Funny Games. And he was saying how we lost the most important generation to lose, that being the Xbox One generation. We can't compete with Sony even if we have great games. Phil, I got a hell of respect for you, bro. But that statement, combined with what we're assuming is going to be in this situation, that's a cop-out, man. That's a cop-out. Everybody knows that if you have great games on your system, it's going to start to turn heads, and it's going to convince people. And if everything else lines up accordingly and it's perfect, you're going to get people invested in that ecosystem. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. And in some situations, you don't even need to have a great string of games. In some situations, you just need to have a great console box with a couple of games here and there, and then everything else speaks for itself. That's it. You'll get a PlayStation console. The exclusives don't sell anywhere near what some of the biggest games of the year sell, but you want to know what does sell? The fact that they created a great box that has all the games that they want to play, and then every now and then, they'll have like one or two of those titles that are exclusive that are interesting to them. Xbox had the opportunity to do that on a larger scale because they bought so many publishers and have so many studios and teams. And you're telling me that at some level, with all the diversity that's going to be going around with the first party exclusives, they couldn't get people to turn their heads and be like, I might need an Xbox to play that. You're telling me Obsidian is giving me these kind of games? You're telling me these studios are giving me these kind of games? Okay, you know what? I'll fork over $200 for a Series S and I'll get this. Now, again, this is just me hypothetically speaking. I could be completely wrong and people not care about that. But what I do know is that great games sell great systems. And if the systems themselves are great and the policies are great attached to it, it's like a winning scenario. Xbox has had none of that in the past 10 years. It's always been very wishy-washy. And then when we start to get momentum, whoops, we tripped over ourselves. And then you realize that Xbox was the one who tied the shoelaces and they tied them together. That's how it's always been, man. It's never this ideal scenario where it's just like, let's just do this. It's always something else that happens. Like Xbox, just they put their foot on the rake and they smack themselves in the face. Talk about great games don't sell systems. We can't compete with PlayStation. We lost the most important generation to lose because of digital support. Xbox, you got me back into the ecosystem. And yes, I'm anecdotal, but you got me back into the ecosystem because you were actually trying to get people back in. You sold me on Game Pass. You sold me on the console. And now you're telling me, you know what? Well, we don't know about that with the console future, man. We just might as well just give these games to other people. At that point, it's just like, I must really love playing with an Xbox console with Xbox branding on an Xbox controller. Pretty cool controller. I must really love that to not go back on my PlayStation, or if you can have these games portably on the Switch natively. And that's what makes this sad and frustrating for a lot of people in the community. Because they saw the vision, they clung to hope for so many years. That's what they've done. They've clung to hope. And you've taken that away from them. And then I'm not even going to get into the discussion of like, if there is no importance on trying to sell Xbox consoles because everything is monthly active users on other systems, is there even going to be an Xbox platform in 10 years? Like, yes, we know there's going to be another console. But if you're not putting emphasis on trying to sell people on a console, what sense is there to put emphasis on building a great console for people if it's all about MAUs, monthly active users? I mean, sure, Microsoft, they sell things that might not be the greatest sellers by comparison to like MacBooks or stuff like that. But we're talking about people who buy stuff for productivity purposes and not gaming. If they look at it and they say it's not in the cards anymore to create an Xbox console in traditional sense, who says they won't just go out there and be like, you know what? We're not even selling that many consoles anyway. Let's just make all these things streamable. We'll come out with the cloud handheld hybrid. We're going to do that. I mean, Xbox has the money to piss away to keep experimenting all that stuff, and I think that'll be interesting to see how it responds. But still, at the core, people do love that traditional experience with those traditional style of exclusives. And if that is not viable for them anymore, that's what they think. I personally believe that they're trying to chase that fast cash instead of building the brand back up and having it be stronger when they are poised to have it be at its strongest point. If you continue with that Game Pass plan of like a big game every quarter and you get those subscribers up and you have people out there, and that's also another thing, the last major point that I'm going to touch on. That's also another thing we got to consider. Let's talk about Game Pass. It's profitability. Now, Phil Spencer has gone on here. He's talked about it. He's, sworn saying that like Game Pass is profitable for them. And I believe him. I think that Game Pass was profitable before the division spent $100 billion on Activision Blizzard King. Now, I don't know. Now, you would think that, okay, with all these big Activision games going on Game Pass day and date, of course they'll get more subscribers. I don't know. That's not tested. And unfortunately, for the people that spent all that money, they're just like, no. We want to make that money back now. They don't want Game Pass subscribers to grow. They don't care about that after they spent all that money. They want returns on investment, bro, because that's what it is. These are business people. But here's the thing, and this is where my mind has also been going throughout the course of this video. What if, when we get to that event next week, what if we get to a point where they talk about Game Pass and they're just like, okay, there's going to be some games that are coming multi-platform to other systems. Smaller titles, not day and date, service games, but Game Pass. What if, in order to keep these games quasi-exclusive, because I don't think they're all going to be exclusive anymore. I think they are definitely going multi-plat to an extent. But what if one of the contingencies is that Game Pass is no longer going to be day and date for some of the biggest titles? You might still have some of the smaller games like a Pentiment or a Hi-Fi Rush, but the next Call of Duty, I don't think that's going to be day and date in Game Pass. The next Elder Scrolls title, if they're seeing that Call of Duty is still selling like crazy and they know how those Elder Scrolls games sold before that, I mean, yeah, they'll make money on PC, but what if one of the ways that they can keep Game Pass day and date on consoles and on PC is that it had to be day one on PS5 and Nintendo Switch 2? What if Elder Scrolls 6 is day one on Xbox consoles, Game Pass? But in order for it to stay day one on Xbox, they have to subsidize it and make that money on PlayStation and Nintendo Switch 2. Would people be opposed to that? Would people agree to it as the lesser of two evils as opposed to everything just being, exclusive versus multiplat, all that? Like, there's so much stuff to consider. And this is why I said it's like that 5-year period in Avengers Infinity War to Endgame where we just don't know. So now we're theorizing and speculating stuff that's probably not going to happen, or it could happen on some level. But it's crazy to think about, my friends. It's crazy that we are going to be living in a world where MAUs, monthly active users, win out in the end. And the idea of the traditional console, yeah, depending on who you're talking to, that's going to be going away in 10 years. And we're seeing a lot of these publishers, console manufacturers, I should say, taking steps for that. Nintendo seems to be the most traditional of the bunch. They don't need to do that for now. But PlayStation has already started doing day and date on PC with their multiplayer titles. And their exclusive games, it's about 2 years now. But if they look over and they see that it's making them way more money to do stuff day and date rather than a staggered release, they might push up that timetable. Because remember, there was a time where we all said, myself included, PlayStation's not going to put games on PC. It's not going to happen. Well, it's just a one-off. And I mean, come on now. If you wanted to play God of War, you played it years ago. And, Helldivers makes sense from a multiplayer point of view. And then they just start seeing it, man. They look for all this data. The data is what's paramount. The data is what they send to these number crunchers. That's what it's all about, baby. That's what it's all about, whether we like it or not. But ladies and gentlemen, those were the rambling thoughts of a random black guy with glasses here on the internet. I can't believe I did this entire video in one take. It's probably well over 40 minutes. So if you guys made it through to the end, comment down below and let me know what you thought about this. There was literally little to no cuts and edits throughout the course of the video. I might have taken out a period where, you know, I just need to get some water, or I was like, I misspoke over myself. But as it stands, guys, this is just all one take. It kind of felt like we were doing a stream. So comment down below and let me know what your guys' thoughts are about this situation. Do you think this is the right move for the Xbox brand? Do you think that, you know, this is just the cost of doing business, and if you wanted ABK, you got ABK with caveats? It's going to be very interesting to see what happens next week at this Microsoft Xbox gaming business events. I really hope they stream this so we can see exactly what is going down and see what the potential fallout will be. I mean, we're not going to get a new Fallout game until next decade anyways, but regardless of that, my friends, from me to you for now, my name is NGS signing out, and like always, I will catch you guys later. Peace out, y'all. Have a good one.